So this is the project for the day. A little bubble that you could use for a Christmas tree ornament or a pendant. I'll zoom out and give you a proper size. You can see that it would make a nice little pendant. Okay, for this project we're going to work in a 30 millimeter circle. So set your dividers at 15 mil and scribe your circle. Cut 2 straight pieces of wire this long, 30 millimeters long, and then we're going to cut 2 more pieces to fit on the sides at a 90-degree angle so that we end up with 6 pieces, 6 ends. Now this is 1.6 diameter brass wire, and it's just for me to do the prototype. So get your links correct and file the ends flat. It'll make our life easier when we go to solder the pieces together. These side pieces will also be 30 millimeters long, and I just use my chain nose pliers in my fingers. Yeah, so this is roughly what it looks like. Now file these ends flat and make sure that everything fits right on your circle. File a little flat where the curve is because we want a nice flat area where we're going to solder. Do both sides. Flux, mix up your flux, make sure that you're not just putting water on. So now we'll just have 2 pieces of solder to put on this spot. So I'm going to cut two 2-millimeter long pieces because they've got a pretty good size area to solder. Now be sure that you keep working in your circle, keep looking at your circle, push things around so that they fit. Yep. And now we're ready to solder. Neutral flame like always. Keep your solder pick in your hand. Gently warm it up to begin with to make sure everything stays in place. Just circling. Now let it cool a little bit, quench it and pickle it. Push it so that the flux doesn't stick to the charcoal block. And this is basically what we want at this time. So take your piece out of the pickle, dry it, and we're going to start with the largest space in the dapping block and just hit right in the middle of your wire. And we're going to work it progressively smaller and smaller, always making sure that our punch is smaller than the die. Yep. So what you want is this height to be half the diameter. And then when we put the two together, it'll be a perfect sphere. Now, the reason I had you do the individual wire like this was, at the beginning of the project, I thought, well, I'll just make a 30 millimeter circle, put the pieces of wire inside, and dome it, and then I'll have two pieces of wire to solder together. Bad idea, because I'd forgotten how much the outer of a hemisphere compresses in the doming block. It compresses by 1/3, and when you're asking wire to hold its shape so that it doesn't bend, you're asking too much. And the smaller the wire, the worse it is. So I redid the project so that we're doing without this outer ring, we're just doing the inner wire pieces. My brass prototype worked well enough that I went to silver. The silver wire is 1.2, same dimensions. And as you work it down in your doming punch, what you can do is just hold the two pieces together, and you'll be able to see when it's actually a hemisphere. So when it's a hemisphere, set your pieces on something flat. Make sure all of the legs are flat and that they all touch on both of these. And then what we're going to do is put them together and solder them where they touch, one at a time, using hard solder. Yep, so just make sure that they're all filed nice and flat where they touch. You can solder 2 or 3 of them. I solder them one at a time, and then I just adjust where they touch for the next one, solder it, do the next one, work your way around. That way you don't make yourself crazy trying to do them all at one time. I use the double third hand from GRS to individually hold the pieces. I'll show you. So I'm not going to worry about anything other than where these two touch, and we get them so that they line up perfectly. I'll zoom in. So these two touch perfectly, and I can see that the other ones aren't quite lined up. I don't care. We're just going to solder this one. A little bit of solder. Put a small piece of solder on your charcoal block and pick it up with your solder pick, because what we're going to do is pick solder these. It just makes our life so much easier. And we just heat the pick, lower it, touch the solder, it'll jump onto it. Heat this. Now watch your flame, because my flame is only touching these two. You don't want it to go down and hit the other ones, because if it does, chances are it will melt one of the pieces. So just bring this up to temperature. Yep, soldered. Now at this point we can quench it, line up the next two, solder them. We'll just work our way all the way around. I'm still not paying attention to any of the rest of them. I just went to the next one, pushed, pulled, lined those two up. You don't have to use both third hands on this one now. You can get that out of your way. Flex that, one little piece of hard solder, and just continue working your way around. Okay, they're all soldered together. If you manage to get all this done without melting a piece of wire, give yourself a pat on the back. You really have to pay attention to your flame pointing the correct direction. If you point the flame down inside rather than just across what you're trying to solder, it'll melt something far away every time. So, good on you. Pickle it, have a look at it, straighten these out a little bit, tidy up the outside bits with 400 grade paper on your sanding stick. If they're slightly crooked, what you can do is use your parallel jaw pliers and just squeeze them on the side to line them up.